So when my question is like, I mean, how did you start? I mean, what was your inspiration to start this, the now word journey? And another question that kind of connected to this, like, how did you reach to this point, like, from where you started and now where you are right now? What was your journey? Yeah, I'm just excited and curious to know more about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. How what version do you want of the story? I have an hour-long version that I preached as a sermon at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. You probably don't want that version. There's a, in theory, there should be a 2-minute version, but generally that becomes a 5-minute version. Um, Maybe we start with that.
Yes,
Uh,
that's safe enough to try.
right. So it began when I was born in 1961 in Berkeley, California. No. Um, in 2010, I was working as a financial advisor, helping people invest, do what was then known as socially responsible investing, investing according to progressive values, to
Mm,
progress, to avoid things like fossil fuels and the defense industry and gambling and tobacco and other destructive, um, investing in destructive practices.
mm, mm,
And supporting initiatives that do good things in the world. It was before impact investing was even the big thing it is now. Anyway, I stopped doing that because I got totally captivated by a new way that I saw to make a difference in the world. I thought that helping people move their money around to different parts of the stock market was okay, but it's still the stock market, and wasn't having the
mm,
impact that I really, that
mm,
my heart and my soul was looking for. And what happened was, I had to find clients. Actually, I think I'm giving you the 10-minute version. I had this idea to find clients for my investment advisory business, that I would start a little discussion group in a local coffee house. I had some friends of mine owned it. And it was like an overnight success. And a bunch of people from that Unitarian Universalist congregation that I mentioned started coming and promoting it. And other people, that we knew in town were interested. And there were like 20, 30 people a night coming, or every week we were doing it. I'd never done anything like that before. Um, and it went really well. And I sort of discovered I had some kind of, talent for working with groups in that way. I just invented a process for it. I knew nothing about group process and facilitation, hosting. Had never heard the term people in the space. So almost exactly a year after that, February, so that was like February of 2009 that I started that. February 2010, um, I'd gotten on Facebook, and I see that there's some political stuff happening on Facebook. A huge wave of interest in a response to the Tea Party movement in the United States, this very conservative reactionary movement that had arisen in the previous year in 2009. And literally 100,000 people a month for 3 months straight joined a Facebook group called Join the Coffee Party Movement, was what they called it.
Ah,
And they wanted people to gather in local coffee houses to have civil conversation about the issues of the day, which is exactly what I had been doing every week for the past year.
wow.
So there was all this energy. I mean, literally, and like thousands of these people were on Facebook. There was a forum structure in Facebook at the time, so they were there talking, and we would get on the phone in the middle of the night. And what should the coffee party be? How could we respond? And I got connected with the leadership of this initiative, and they want, and then there was this big day in April of 2010 when they wanted people to have these sessions all around the United States, and I planned one for my local coffee house, and I thought, well, there must be some knowledge about how to work with groups skillfully, and I should maybe find out about that, and not only do that in the session I was going to hold, but suggest to the leaders of the whole thing, here's some good processes for you to use. And so that led me to discover things like the World Cafe and open space technology and appreciative inquiry and deliberative polling and citizen juries. I met Tom Atlee, who created the Co-Intelligence Institute and is one of the leading compilers of all these processes and apostles for things like wise democracy. He recently created this pattern language. Do you know this? You're into governance, Umesh. You would love this if you haven't.
A wise democracy pattern language. Wow.
This is an amazing resource, especially if governance is something you care about. So
Yeah, yeah,
Tom
yeah, yeah.
created this recently. so I connect with him, and then I also read this book by a guy named Clay Shirky called Here Comes Everybody. Both of these things my mother suggested to me. Tom had stayed at her house for a nonviolent communications workshop in Austin, Texas, where she lives. So she had recently met him. And then she had read this book, Here Comes Everybody, and thought it was interesting. So she shared it with me. And it's about how the internet is revolutionizing the way that human society organizes itself. And so that made me realize, oh, we have these social technologies like World Cafe for working with large groups and having generative dialogue, right? And now we have this internet technology for gathering large groups together, like in ways that were never before possible in human history. And here I am witnessing that happening with this Facebook group, right? Hi, Claire. I'm telling the story of how I got into doing this. Umesh asked me, and so we're recording it.
Yes.
I have to go. I was just waving goodbye. I have my 1 o'clock thing.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I'd love to hear the story, but I'll hear it
it's
another
being
time.
recorded, so you can.
All right.
And you'll see yourself popping in and out. Yes, I think I'm now up to the 15-minute version, right, Umesh?
Yes, that's okay. I'm good. I enjoy.
Let's see. Why is Claire? I gotta pin myself back here. Yeah. So here I was witnessing this, and so the question then was, well, there must be some people trying to do this, right? Trying to take these in-person processes and host them, facilitate them, translate them into virtual space. Who's doing that? So I asked Tom, and he said, you should talk to Amy Lenzo at the World Cafe Community Foundation. So I did. This is all happening within about 2 days in mid-February 2010. And so I call up Amy, and she says, oh yes, I'm doing World Cafes now with this new conference calling technology called Maestro Conference that lets you bring hundreds of people onto a single call and move them into breakout groups of any size you want, lots of different configurations. So you can actually do the World Cafe process that involves breakout groups of 4. So you can have 500 people in I can't do the math. How many 500 be 25 times 4 be 100 breakout groups or 125 breakout groups of 4, right? That's the number. And they're all answering the same question at the same time, and you can tell them what the prompt is, and then you can shuffle the groups around and do it again, and then you can come back to the main room and you can harvest just like if you were all in a room and do the process. Like, that's amazing, Amy. How many people are doing this kind of thing? And she says about 6. I'm like, like 6 people that you're working with in your group? No, she says, no, like 6 in the world, in the whole world. And when I heard that there were so few people trying to experiment with how to bring all these group processes into virtual space, that was just incredibly exciting and inspiring to me. It was like there was this wide open frontier to explore. And so I decided in that moment, basically, can I be the 7th person? Will you support me and mentor me, Amy? And how do I become an expert in doing this, since nobody really is anyway? We're all learning together. I mean, Amy was certainly much more advanced in many ways than me. But within another 4 months, Amy and I had co-founded a business to offer this as a service called We Dialogue, which still exists to this day. Amy's still running it now with a man named Rowan Simonson. They moved a lot into training. That became her focus and interest, was how to teach people how to do this, and how to do World Cafe in person, but using online, courses to do it. And she's connected with the World Cafe Community Foundation, which is a nonprofit that has a certain mission. What I was really called to do, though, was to learn these capacities and then use them in service to initiatives for fundamental transformation, for addressing social, environmental, economic, spiritual crises, and opportunities for paradigm shifts out in the world. And so that became my work. Amy and I wound up kind of parting ways in a little while, but I got involved with a series of different initiatives. So there've been a dozen or more campaigns, national ones, global ones, regional ones, that I've been either part of the core team for or offered support to in different ways. And along the way, I thought, well, maybe I want my own space too. And the first time I did that really was with the Occupy movement. So there was something called Occupy Cafe that I co-created with a man named Jitendra Darling, and we ran that for about 13 months. And then I went back to working with a lot of different projects. But now what started to call to me, or something like this, I started imagining about 3 years ago. I missed Occupy Cafe. I missed having a space where I could really, be among the lead creators of it and really be creative in terms of how we use our virtual capacities to convene. And I had a lot of ideas around how to reimagine all of these in-person processes in virtual space, so that the essence of them is still there, like open space, for example, that you noticed we're sort of using here, but in a way that you wouldn't necessarily, it's not the exact form, right? If a World Cafe is 2.5 hours of people in a room with 3 breakout groups and a harvest at the end, well, when you move that into virtual space, yes, you could bring everybody onto Zoom or onto Meister Conference and do exactly that. But you could also take the essence of that process, which is lots of people having small group conversations where they're all answering the same question in parallel, and do it in different ways. Like not having to all be on the same call, right? And not at the same time. So you could do it in different languages in your different groups, at different times, using different technology. Maybe sometimes we're on Zoom talking to each other. Maybe sometimes we're typing in some other thing or on a Google Doc. And as long as we can harvest from all those small conversations in some way that's visible to everyone, you essentially have a World Cafe. But it doesn't look like a normal World Cafe. So that's the kind of thing that's inspired me, and that Now What is a place to really both experiment and play, but also be of service to initiatives for change. And so there's all these different groups that are partnering with Now What, that are creating engagement streams that you see now, that are offering different conversations, that we can support with money, through the gift economy or other kinds of services. We can learn together, we can deepen our relationships. And if you look at who's showing up, right, it's a lot of people that come from that transformational space as much as people that come from the hosting and convening and facilitation and organizational development and governance space. So that's one version of the story. Thank you for asking and listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so inspiring and in a way amazing. Yeah. Nice.
Is there more you want to know based on that? I could, or is this good for now as a story?
I just had one question and it just dropped. So I'm just expecting is that important but I think more or less I feel complete with what you have shared and satisfied. Yeah. So it answers. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.